Hi everybody, hopefully I have OBS configured the way I want it to now. Just to test this out, I'm going to make a short changelog video talking about some of the changes that have been implemented in the past couple versions of DS4Windows. And this is basically going to reflect version 2.0.13, which I'm going to plan to release later today. Okay, let me switch over to the other view so get a better view of the actual app. There we go. Alright, the first issue that I came across that I just fixed fairly recently was regarding the default profile that is written when you first make a configuration for DS4Windows. For the longest time I did not realize the fact that the routine had been fixed for new profile to actually use my settings as opposed to the older DS2Windows settings, but the actual default profile that's first made when you first configure DS4Windows was still using the old values. I still have my old default profile here, so I will show that really quick. A lot of these values do represent what actually was in default profiles ever since version 1.4.52. Dead zone being 0. There was no such thing as a max zone or anti-dead zone back then. And max output was basically kind of complementary of how dead zone used to work. I can't really remember exactly offhand about other default settings. I believe this was 0.25, but yeah, the way it was interpreted was different in the older versions. Well, anyway, got off that tangent. Let me close this out, and I'll show you what the new default looks like. So you have 0.08 for the dead zone. Yeah, of course, 1 maxed out for the max zone. 20% for the anti-dead zone to go and try to compete with what most games use for the built-in game dead zone for the Xbox 360 right analog stick. Sensitivity is default, max output's default, linear curve. Most everything else is fairly well similar. This might seem like a minor change, but yeah, definitely these settings for the sticks are definitely a lot better. I prefer them a lot better than the old DS2Windows settings. Now, one piece of functionality that was just re-added back into the profile editor that had been missing since 2.0 was the context menus. I mean, for the longest time, it didn't really bother me that it wasn't there. But then just recently, it really became burdensome. It really became a bother to go and configure each button individually. And I wanted to get that functionality back. Only thing is the fact that the old version that was in the Windows Forms code base was heavily reliant on specific UI entries and was kind of organized in a weird fashion. So I had to kind of try to convert the routine to be a little bit less dependent on the actual UI itself and actually utilize my current view models. I personally prefer the version I have here than the one that used to be in the old Windows Forms code base. Anyway, right now it's just set up where you can change the D-pad buttons and the stick buttons. The old version actually had it set up where you could go and configure the face buttons as well, but I just didn't really see a use for it, so I didn't implement as of yet. The way the preset menu is set up, it shouldn't be too hard to actually implement that if that is desired. But anyway, for a short demonstration, as you can see right now, the buttons on the right analog stick are set up to emulate an Xbox 360 right analog stick. If I right click on any of the highlighted buttons here, it'll go and change all the buttons corresponding to the right stick for a certain mode. And for this demonstration, I will just go and highlight over mouse, click normal. And you can see the fact that actually the middle button is still mapped to that. I could technically do unbound, but I just decided to keep it as a default binding. But you can see up, down, left, and right are all configured to now have the right stick emulate the mouse as opposed to the analog stick. Let me switch that back so it's going back to the default. Let's set up again to go and emulate a right analog stick. I'll go and close this out. The next minor thing I'm going to mention is regarding this little row of social media streams here. Okay, I'm back. Although this might seem minor, this actually was something I wanted to add a long time ago, but with the old Windows Form code base, anytime I tried, it'd always present problems with the whole application slowing down. And that's what that's really the thing that's held back DS4Windows quite a lot, is they had the older code base. You'd try to add any minor thing in there, and it's like, oh, whole application slow down, even routines are never hit. Yeah, .NET is just kind of weird sometimes, and trying to wrestle around it has been a pain. Anyway, you got highlighted links for the various social media accounts that have set up for DS4Windows. You get YouTube, BitChute, BitTube, Library, Discord, Twitter, Mastodon, FrogSite, and Minds. And he's also set up now with a wraparound routine, so instead of actually just launching it directly, it will launch it through Explorers. So let me go there really quick. It probably won't matter to most people, but it was brought up in the GitHub fairly recently. But yeah, now it's set up where that it will not elevate the browser process. Because the way I normally have it set up to where DS4Windows is running is the admin. And if you just go and do process.start and plug a URL, it'll open up your web browser to that URL. That'll work just fine, but it'll actually be running the web browser with administrative privileges. It'll run as elevated. And that didn't really bother me so much, but I could see that would be a problem. So yeah, finally found a way to work around that, so can actually go and unelevate a process from clicking in from an elevated process. And one other minor thing I will mention that's going to be in the next version is just a simple change to the ID column. Beforehand, it would just show the MAC address. Now it's also going to show the associated display name for your input device, as well as the MAC address. As you can see on mine, I'm using the Sony wireless adapter and have my DualShock 4 connected to that, so that's showing up as Sony WA. I can't unplug that right now, but let's see. I'm not even worried about trying to mess around with the cables and showing you a different demonstration of another controller being plugged in. But if you like plug in a DualShock 4 version 2, it should be, say, like DS4 V2, along with the actual controller's MAC address on the side. I think one other thing I will mention is regarding the vertical scale fix that is going to be in 2.0.13 for gyro mouse joystick. Let me open up my Halo profile. Yeah, recently when finishing up Halo Combat Evolved from Master Chief Collection, I found the actual, for the most part, it worked out perfectly fine. I was able to use it perfectly fine. You have a gyro mapped to a mouse joystick and emulate a right analog stick. But at the very end, I felt that the y-axis was a little bit clamped, so I wanted to go and up the vertical sensitivity a little bit, and found it was actually a bug where if you put the vertical scale past 100%, it would invert the output coordinate, and it would act so very wonky. So I had to go and add clamping onto this routine to make sure it would actually stay within the appropriate bounds for the Xbox right analog stick. And I was testing around with this, and yeah, this is set back to 100. I actually found 120 works fairly well in game, and so I actually was playing a little bit of a new campaign using 120. Well, first off, I'll go and show you what it looks like with using 100. Actually, let me pop that up. Yeah, I can't pop that up here. Let's see, do I have it here? Yeah, there it is. See, that's set up where it's you can pitch is mapped to the y-axis and yaw is mapped to the x-axis. Let me bump that a little bit. See, let's go like to 150. See, it's a lot more sensitive, a lot more jumpy when you go and use it in a different vertical scale. One other thing I should mention, especially you can see how much it jumps after it leaves the dead zone. Let me go back into this. You can see the fact that I have a fairly high minimum X and minimum Y set up for the output right analog stick. That's to help to get around the game's built-in dead zone for the right analog stick. I find, yeah, for mapping the gyro to a right analog stick, I actually like it set up where the anti-dead zone's a little bit higher than it would be if you were just to use the right analog stick and map, yeah, the DS4 right stick to an Xbox 360 right analog stick. I believe I'm using the default here. Yep. Well, actually, I'm using the old default of, yeah, 25% for the anti-dead zone as opposed to 20. I will change that right now. Because actually, I do prefer that most of the times. I kind of gone back and forth between the two. I go back into there, set that back to 120 and save it. I definitely will. Unfortunately, I can't actually record a demonstration of how that looks in Halo because, yeah, my potato PC can't handle using OBS and actually playing that game at the same time. The actual recorded footage, even when you're using direct game capture, is very choppy and not doable. At some point, I'll show a demonstration in a different game exactly how that works, but that'll be for another time. Hopefully this recording worked out fairly fine. Let me change scenes back to the full desktop. I don't know, hopefully it actually recorded the gamepad tester just fine with the confined window I had it set in. Well, anyway, hopefully this recorded it just fine and be able to make more of these types of videos in the future. Alright, see you later.